Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Tech Skills Reality Check, Can Your Employees Apply Their Learning on Their Job? My name is Alexa. I'm the Events and Webinar Coordinator here at Brandon Hall Group, and I will be kicking things off for us today. Let's start with some introductions. Our presenters today are Claude Werder, Senior Vice President and Principal Analyst here at Brandon Hall Group, and Frank Gartland, Chief Product and Technology Officer for Skillable. As Chief Product and Technology Officer for Skillable, Frank Gartland leads the platform's development and infrastructure teams, challenging them along with Skillable's partners and customers to create better methods to scale learning. Frank has been innovating with virtual classroom technologies and content since 1999, when his team first delivered fully online instructor-led training for Cisco, Microsoft, EMC, and others. Frank has a passion for challenge-centric learning and thrives on helping people reach their potential and loves building businesses that enable people to make positive impact. I would like to extend a thank you to Skillable for sponsoring today's webinar. A 4-time incorporated 5,000 company, Skillable believes validated learning experiences will transform the way organizations upskill their customers, partners, and employees. Industry leaders such as Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, Veritas, and Skillsoft trust Skillable to deliver hands-on learning experiences at scale. Skillable has delivered on the promise by supporting more than 1 million new learners in 2022 and over 25 million learning experiences in its tenure. For those of you that aren't familiar with Brandon Hall Group is a research and analyst firm that empowers excellence in organizations across the world through our research and tools. A quick mention that we currently have several certification programs open for enrollment, including our Certified Learning Strategist program. Visit certification.brandonhall.com to learn more about how to earn that designation. Your participation in our surveys is one of the most crucial components for our research. So if you have a few minutes to spare and see any topics that you can take a survey for, it's greatly appreciated. Links will be available in your handout, or you can always visit brandonhall.com. All participants receive a piece of complimentary research once the results are analyzed. And finally, a few logistics. To ask questions, we ask that you please use the questions panel on your control bar. Today's presentation is being recorded. We will share a link to the recording and a PDF of the presentation via email in roughly 24 hours. If you would like to download a copy of today's presentation instantly, the link to do so will be available in the chat momentarily. The chat is also open for today, so we invite you to join in on today's discussion and share your thoughts as we go through, or just simply pop in, say hello, and let us know where you're joining from today. And without further delay, I'll pass things over to Frank so we can dive right in. And Frank, you're on mute as well.
I was on mute. I'm sorry about that. Let me go back to our agenda slide. So, hey, Alexa, thanks a ton for that introduction. I was sitting there thinking I was totally ready to go and share my screen, and I wasn't. But anyway, Claude, I'm excited to join you. Thank you so much to Brandon Hall for inviting us. We've got some really important things to talk about. We believe in experiential learning and hands-on experience in terms of helping organizations to enable their people to do better things. Like in the end, all of us here, all of you listening, we're all about helping our people to better contribute to what we're trying to do, to better contribute to what our organization is trying to do, to our business goals. And I think figuring out how hands-on can really help drive business value is a big part of, Claude, what we're going to talk about today. I'm pretty fired up. Are you?
I am. I think this is an important topic, and we talk about it in a lot of different ways at Brandon Hall. This is a very direct talk about hands-on experience, the importance of really focusing on doing and being able to prove skills rather than knowing. And I think it's a critical driver to success these days.
Me too. I couldn't have put it better. And I tell you what I'd love for you to do, we are going to ask a few polling questions. I'm not going to tell you how many, but I'd love it if you guys could literally have your fingers on your mouth, like ready to go. We'd love to hear some votes when we ask some questions, because we're going to probably tailor this conversation a little bit to what you guys think. And so I'm really eager for that. Now, by the way, a lot of you maybe haven't heard of Skillable, right? And Skillable, we're really excited about the things that we're doing. We're most excited about the way our customers have engaged with us. G2.com is a lot about what your customers really think as opposed to what we like to say about ourselves. The fact that our customers have given us these 6 years in a row, a lot of kudos around how we enable them with hands-on is a big deal. When it comes to performance testing or PBT, like the notion of, hey, instead of answering, getting validated with a skill based on how you answer multiple choice questions or different types of items, since 2007, we've been enabling folks to actually put a hands-on experience, a genuine experience. And then based on the outcomes of what someone does, we actually validate their skills. And we're going to talk a lot about hands-on skilling and validation and creating hands-on experiences that generate skilling data. We're going to talk about that a lot because since 2007, it's incredible like how much we've learned about things that organizations can do. And we're starting to see an incredible number of very, very well-known companies really adopt this as a way that they're able to drive forward. We're going to talk a lot about that. Now, I will say this, like 2007, like it's a long time ago, right? I mean, for me, it doesn't, I don't know, Claude, about you, but when she said I've been doing this since 1999, I sort of cringed a little bit. I'm like, let's yeah, I don't need us to advertise that sort of stuff, but we've been doing this a while, right?
Yeah, we have longer than maybe we'd care to admit. And what's great about it is we're always learning new things, right? And hopefully that'll happen today where we're taking a new tack on what we all know is important, and that is being able to get people to use the skills they need to drive their careers and business success.
Right on, right on, right on. So let me do one more thing, just a couple of moments. Just this slide looks like I'm going to talk about it a long time. I won't. So stay here. Don't go over to email quite yet. The idea here is I want to help you understand kind of how we've evolved as an organization. I believe how the space is evolving, right? In 2000, back in that time, that first decade, it was all about LMSs and e-learning courses and the scale. Oh my gosh, like the dollars per class per learner, like that, just the scale of and volume of training was a big part of that first decade of the 2000s. It was all about scale and efficiency, which, hey, that makes sense, right? That's a good thing. And in the end, it was all about, hey, can they pass the test? Like that was the big deal. Do you have that acronym of certification behind your name? Which again, certification is still critical. It's still important. It's a very big, important fabric of what we do as businesses and skills. But there around 2014, it really went to more learning experience platform, LXPs, and kind of informal learning. This notion of people can be learning all the time, like weaving learning into what their everyday job is. And we did shift from less about scale, although scale was part of it, right? That was inferred. But it's more about the experience and like our employees, are they doing it? Are they using it? What does my utilization look like? And then finally, like, do they really have this skill, right? I think what we're seeing today with incredible amounts of our customers are shifting here recently into, it has to be an experiential platform that's kind of providing people skills and opportunities for skill development while it's validating all at the same time. So instead of having people going through a learning exercise and they're sort of still on their heels going, well, I got through it, I think I can do it, instead of on their toes, like, hey, I've been validated that I did those things and I understand it because I learned while I was doing it. At the end of the day is, can they do the work? Like, do you have people who know these things so well that, hey, when there's an emergency and the door's locked, there's only the people that really know how to fix it are there and they can't be distracted. Are the people that you're skilling, are they in the room or are they out of the room? Like that's kind of where it is. Can they do the job? Claude, I know in your research, you've seen that this is kind of the way that the industry's gone as well, true?
It's definitely the way it's going. I think a lot of organizations are struggling to keep up and maybe understand where the technology is. And I think also beyond the technology, there's still a lot of focus on effectiveness as knowledge and not in the ability to transfer that knowledge into actual doing, and that there are now tools available to help you do that in a reasonably easy way, straightforward way. It used to be that people kind of resisted this because it was so hard to develop. And as we're going to talk about today, it's not difficult to develop now, and the technology drives that.
Claude, exactly. That is exactly right. I tell you, and in the end of it, really, when you think about what Claude and I are talking about is really this. If you really had to just pare it all down, like, what are we all here for? Like, what are we trying to do? It's we need to find the right people to fill the chair. Like, how do we recruit the right person to do the job by assessing and validating? And a lot of that is about skills. Then it's about what are the onboarding programs? What are the experiences we can put people through in an onboarding program to help them to do the job? And then how do we continue to develop and grow their talent so that they can be recruited into a different role within my department or within a different department within my company? How can they continue to help the organization drive their departmental company goals forward, as they continue to develop and assess themselves and retain? Like, it's all about skills. Do they have the skills to do the job? And then that just keeps going. It's that cycle. Now, all this sounds super, but we're all here for a reason. We're in this webinar for a reason, and I hope that you're just starting to enjoy it and you're staying with us. But the reality is we have a lot of ways to go. Like, the Department of Education in the UK had this great statistic: 84% of the skill shortage. And by the way, this whole notion of the skills shortage, we've been talking about this since the 70s. In the 70s, they called it the misery index. The misery index shifted, right, to this thing that we now know as the skill shortage, right? It's what is going on with all these technical jobs. There's just not enough people to do the work. Now, it is not just about technical skills. And that's what I love about this quote, because it captures the notion of, it isn't just about, hey, I have the skills, I did it in a sterile environment, I answered the question correctly. It's the practical skill. Do I understand the context around when to use this skill? Why do I use this skill? How does that skill connect to other skills? And so do I have the practical ability to make positive impact based on the skills that I have? Now, you may not have read that much into that quote, but that's what I read into that quote. It's the practical skills. So what I'd love to know, Claude, I think you guys have done some research around this specifically, true?
True. And we, this statistics that you had on that last slide falls in line with our research. In fact, our research says it's even a little bit worse, that it shows that only 1 in 10 organizations believe that their learning delivery does a good or excellent job of establishing that learners can demonstrate skills that allow them to successfully do the work in their current job. That is a damning statistic, and something that is really needs to be turned around. And that's why this is such an important topic, and that we're doing so much research, and Skillable and other companies are really driving these kind of solutions because it just needs to improve. I just one more thing. Going back, you don't have to go back to the next slide, but when you were talking about that, I can't tell you how many companies come to us and say, no matter what we do, we can't hire people that actually have the skills we need. They say they do, we think they do, but they really don't. And then the question is, well, do you have a means to test that? Do you have a means to validate that? And the answer is, well, usually there's just silence on the phone. Right. And so what we're trying to do here is provide ways and really accent the importance of filling this gap and changing this this weakness that a lot of organizations have.
Claude, I tell you, it's incredible. I mean, this is people, like, even if it's not that bad, if it's twice better than that, it's still only 20%, right? I mean, this is an incredible statistic. And if you wonder, like, why are we constantly talking about the skill shortage? And if you're someone that's in L&D and you had some time like Claude and I have in the space, it's like, well, hey, wait a minute. We're smart people, like, we're doing great things. Like, why are we not changing the needle, right? I think the reality is there's some things missing. And I think that's what we want to talk about today. Like, what's missing? Like, what are we missing in this whole thing? And I believe a big part of it is actual live environments where people can learn while they're doing things. And you might say, well, hey, we do sandboxes. Well, sure, of course you do. Everyone does a sandbox. And you might even send a PDF along with it that says, hey, here's a way that you can kind of, do this work. Well, sometimes just setting up my sandbox so that I can actually get to the place where I'm actually learning something, like, it might be 2 days of work. People don't have 2 days of work to set up the environment. I think the next thing is just then, what are those methods beyond accompanying a PDF? What are the methods to help people really develop the skill, right? Because as I said before, like, are these people on their toes, like, I'm ready to go tackle this project because they're confident? Or are they kind of on their heels because they're like, well, I went through a course and I've poked around with this on my own, but I'm not sure if I'm thinking about it right. I'm not sure if I can sew these skills together to produce a real result, right? And in the end, the notion is, even if you have some hands-on things, which I'm sure a lot of you do, how do you scale it to all the audiences you have? I mean, you might, whether you've got 100 sales engineers all around the world, or whether you've got, 200 sales engineers in a call center, right, in the same building, right? It doesn't matter. How do you scale hands-on in a way that really is still productive? And I'd love to know, Claude, like, what is the audience? Like, where are we in the audience in terms of these concepts?
Well, so let's find out. Let's ask our first poll question. You promised poll questions, and we have several of them here. So the first one is, are you using hands-on experiences now? And so we've given you a few choices. Do you use general sandboxes for exploratory learning? And maybe accompanied with a PDF, as Frank mentioned. Do you use traditional step-by-step labs integrated with courses? Do you have graded labs for skill assessment? Performance testing for skill validation? Do you use all of these things or none of them? And so that gives us an idea of kind of where you are and can help us as we go forward in the webinar to kind of streamline some of the things we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you're kind of halfway listening and halfway in email, this change of voice hopefully gets your attention, right? We'd love you to grab your mouse right now and choose one. Which is the best one for you? And that choice 3 is graded labs for skill assessment, right? So there's a difference between just a sandbox and then a step-by-step lab. Maybe it's the environment with some steps along the side, and then something that actually is grading the lab, right? And then final performance testing. So please do us that favor and vote. And then I forget, Claude, are we going to share the results or at this point? Or
we're going to share the results. So Alexa, let us know when we're ready to go.
Alexa is our wonderful host. I'm gonna think that she's gonna know when to share those the right time. Is that right, Claude?
She should. Alexa, are you getting results?
There we go. There we go. So this is kind of in line with what I see all the time. There's looks like 9% of you are using
I'm not seeing it.
Oh yeah, I see it. I see it.
Okay, great. Go ahead and share.
9% are doing general sandboxes. 29% are doing traditional step-by-step. 1 person is doing graded labs. Only one individual so far. Oh, I see. The graded labs for skill assessment is actually three different folks. So a very small percentage. And then 18% are doing performance testing. 15% all of the above, which kudos to you. I think that's awesome. And then 21% are doing none of the above. And so, which makes sense, totally makes sense.
Yeah, and I would say that ties in pretty well with what we've found. If we go to the next slide, we can tell you what our research shows. And it's more or less in line, right? That the percentage of organizations in our research that use hands-on learning frequently, this graph shows that, and they rated themselves either a 4 or 5 in terms of frequency. So that means that 26% of organizations say that they use scenario-based, cohort-based learning, but then it drops to 14% for scenario-based skills validation, and then 14 and 13% for either in-person or games and simulations. So what we believe employers need more of is learning that puts employees in that situation where they can really apply those skills. And this is what people are kind of struggling. And we have, I guess, another poll question coming up here in terms of to what extent that you're using the hands-on experiences. So we asked you the types that you use. Now, want to get a sense of to what extent do you use hands-on experiences to validate that employees can adequately perform their jobs. So is it most of the time 76% or more? Is it about half to 3/4? Is it 26%, 50%? Not very much, 1 to 25%, or never. So we just want to again get a sense of where you are with things.
Yeah, and this is one of those things too that as you grab your mouse again and vote, think about, and it looks like quite a few of you are doing this. Like, how are you actually using the hands-on to validate, which connotes that you're scoring the lab? Like, how many of you are actually doing that?
I don't think people are seeing the poll. Alexa, are you having struggles with it? If so, maybe people could just put some responses and some comments in the chat, and we can get a sense from there. We're really looking to get a sense of how much you're doing it. So we know kind of what you're doing, but how often is it happening? So if you could drop some ideas in the chat. Oh, there's the poll. It looks like we're having a little technical difficulties, but here's the poll again. And if you can just, if you can see it and if you can vote, please do. If not, just love to see some of your comments in the chat in terms of what you're doing now.
Yeah, couple quick comments in the chat just for everybody, real quick. So would love you guys to participate in the chat and ask us questions as we go. So Cheryl, number one, I love how you're doing the Bueller joke on the bot. Like, that's funny. Like, there's a new thing called Bueller that actually allows you to have a video of yourself join meetings for you, so people think you're attending even if you're not. Like, so that's the great one, Cheryl. I love that. Hello to a bunch of people. And yeah, I see that everyone's got the poll show. I know you didn't before, you have it now. We've got a few people voting. I'm just going to give like 5 or 10 more seconds. If you could please grab your mouse if you haven't and tell us, like, are you using hands-on? If the answer is you're not, then never is the vote. But are you using hands-on experiences to validate that people really know what they're doing, like really have the skills to do the job? So if you could continue to vote, that'd be great. It looks like 10% are doing it quite a bit, like 76% or more. 14% are doing it half the time or 3/4 of the time. 29%, a little less than that, and then 38%, and then 10% are doing it never. So what I love about that is there is an audience here that I'd say that this audience is slightly ahead of the curve, which is great. Like, and you guys are taking your time, you're investing your time to learn more about it, which tells us that you get it. So that makes sense. It also aligns with a trend that we're seeing, Claude. I want you to talk about this trend you're seeing with hands-on.
Yeah, so I wanted to take a step back for a minute and look at that and look how learning delivery has evolved over the past 5 years or so. We've been tracking this annually. The graphic compares percentage of formal, informal, and experiential learning between 2017 and the end of last year. And you can see there's a pretty monumental shift. Formal learning, which used to dominate, this means mostly classroom and course space, has dropped by almost 50%. And then the percentage of experiential and informal learning is now used about the same or more than formal learning. But I think the key thing here is that experiential learning is a kind of a broad term and does not necessarily mean that the experiential is hands-on, where learners are challenged to apply skills in a specific situation and evaluation, and that they're evaluated. And as we saw from the graphic earlier, the form of experiential learning that we're talking about is not as common as we would like it to be. So clearly, if your organization still delivers most of its learning in a formal way, and quite a few of you kind of indicated that you weren't using a lot of experiential learning yet, you're not really in sync with the trends that we're seeing. And if you're providing scenario-based hands-on learning, but aren't doing it in a way that really validates and shows that people can apply the skills to do specific jobs, then you can't really determine if your learning methods are really truly effective in terms of driving business outcomes.
I'll tell you what, I love this. And I do love the trend that's moving up, because what it tells us, it tells us that our approach and our understanding as people that are trying to get folks to be more skilled is kind of catching up with some of the research. Like, one of the things that I wanted to share, because I think the research is critical, right? Scenario-based learning. We don't talk about scenario-based learning. We've been talking about scenario-based learning for the last 20, 30 years, 25 years anyway, right? Adults, it's super important because it's all about real-world situations. It's about relevance. It's about, as an adult, my mind engages more when I'm like, hey, this could really happen. Like, I understand, I can put myself in this place, or I've even been in this place before, right? So the ability to engage and pay attention and retain the knowledge skyrockets when it's scenario based. We know that from what Ruth Clark taught us and Laban Wenger. Experiential learning is similar. It's not just the situation, it's also the environment. If it's just a sim and I kind of know it's just a sim, I'm kind of like, a part of my mind checks out. And again, it's about relevance. It's about, I'm not really learning this. It's kind of like if I'm practicing scuba in 3 feet of water, it's a little different than going into the ocean, right? There's a little level of, hey, I could just stand up, no big deal, right? But when it's a real world environment, it's truly Azure. It's not just a sim, it's different. Learning by doing. This is obviously a big part of what hands-on is all about, is that adults, the more that they can work through situations on their own. We talk about it, especially in the Western Hemisphere, this notion of, failing fast and failing forward, right? Well, the idea behind it is not really about failing. It's about, hey, when you make a mistake, you learn from the mistake, you get it, right? And you can work through it. It's not a matter of, well, I made a mistake, I'm out, right? It's more like, okay, what can I do now? How can I figure this out? Because when it comes to a skill, when it comes to doing something on the job, that's what it's about. It's about, okay, this is sort of connected to this, and because of this situation, I can work it out on my own. I can figure it out. That is what work is. So if the learning experience is about the same thing, you're developing a skill of how do I work it out, right? And then finally, Robert and Elizabeth Bjork, with what I think is some of the most important information from an instructional design standpoint. The notion of writing instructions for hands-on experience so that it's not so easy that it's a lay down. It's more like an old school lab. A traditional lab is a 10th grader or a 10-year-old. People probably get through it. They're just like click here, type this, click, click, you're done. And I used to teach long ago, many years ago, and it's incredible. And this still happens today, where folks are in the middle of the lab, and it's like, I'm done, but I'm not really sure what I just did or when I would do that. What that tells you is the hands-on experience is not helping the person connect the context to a skill that he or she can own and actually use, right? And that's what desirable difficulties do for us. And as a result of what we're able to provide, just as a community, and is we know that there's a current reality to where, hey, labs, quote unquote labs, this hands-on experience, these are hard and expensive to scale. And as a result of this reality, organizations just can't pay for it. Like, it's like, we're doing it, and then IT gets on us because there's so much storage and it's expensive. Like, there's a lot to do to figure it out. The next thing is that when you build a lab, a lot of the time, they're not designed to do the teaching. The deal is as an organization, you just want the lab to work. Like the instructor or the course, the e-learning, the course and the instructor will do the teaching. We just need to check the box to provide a lab so people can click through it and kind of get their toes wet a little bit, right? It's not designed to teach. So as a result of that, human beings miss the opportunity to become more capable of really doing the work. And then finally, they're not validated a lot of the time, as we've been talking about. And since they're not validated, there's an opportunity for people to become confident on the job. Like, I can do this, like, put me in, coach. Like, that's the idea, right? And this, by the way, is a micro result, which is the individual doesn't get it. It has a macro one too, where, your department might not get it, right? Because the department is just the whole of it's the sum of its parts, right? And then on top of that, your partner community might not get it. You might have some partners that are great at deploying this particular part of your solution. You might have other partners that aren't, right? So as a result, go ahead, Claude, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something here, maybe a slight tangent, but I think there's also, because what we're talking about is all done in a safe environment, right, where people can make their mistakes and then learn from them. It's a great way to learn, but you're also doing more than that. You're creating a sense of belonging. You're creating an understanding that the organization is really trying to create an environment where they can grow and prosper. And so there's some talent development advantages from doing this. In addition to making learning more effective, you're also building a sense of community among people who are doing it. You're giving them the ability to make mistakes in a safe environment. You're supporting them. And all of that kind of ties into their career growth and their ability to learn new skills, which can create greater cohesion with the organization. So there's a lot of side benefits here, in addition to the fact that it just gives you a better idea of whether people can actually do their jobs.
Claude, I love that context. I'm so glad we're recording this because I'm gonna steal part of that for future. That was really, I got super insightful. What I'd like to do now, by the way, everybody do me a favor, get out of email, grab your mouse, get ready. Claude, I'd love to find out, and also we're about to do a poll. So Alexa, make sure you're ready to go. But let's ask another poll, Claude.
Yeah, so this question is, we know that, if this were easy for people, more organizations would be doing it. So what are the barriers to doing more hands-on experiential learning? So is it a lack of alignment between the learning function and business needs? Is it a lack of expertise within the learning organization? Is it the availability of technology or the time required to develop the experiences? Is it all of this, or maybe none of it? Maybe you're not really facing any of these barriers and you just have to, keep working at it and get it done. So what are the barriers that you are experiencing? And hopefully the poll will work well. If not, and you're having trouble, please just feel free to drop some comments in the chat. We're getting a few comments, and we're going to be getting to some of those and some of the questions as we move along as well. So when we have some people voting, we'll show the results here. And here we go.
Cool,
what are we seeing?
Looks like not everybody voted, but it looks like a good sample did. So only 4% said it was a lack of alignment between the learning and business needs, which I think that's great.
Good news. Yeah, that's great news.
It's great, right? I think like as a learning and development group of people, as the greater family of L&D, like we're doing much better with that, which is super. The next bit is the lack of expertise within the learning organization, which makes sense. 4% of the people said that. I'm actually shocked that that's not a little higher. That's surprising. The availability of the technology is 26%. Now that lines up. Time required to develop the experiences, that lines up too. And I think there's some things that I'd love to talk with those folks about. All of the above is 39%. So 39% is like, man, all of this applies. That not one person said none of the above. So it looks like there definitely are some barriers, Claude.
Yeah, there clearly are. And this probably means that the learning organization and the business need to work together to maybe change their approach, maybe a learning strategy, maybe taking a look at your technology strategy. Whatever the barriers are, if you know what they are, I think you need to try to find a strategy that's going to address those as directly as possible as you move forward. And we can talk more about how to go about that maybe. And again, anybody who has any questions or comments about what's going on with them, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, we really would love to hear. So again, if you have some thoughts or some experiences that the rest of the group would be beneficial for everyone, please do share. We're looking forward to kind of amplify those with you and for you. But I want to go back a little bit, Claude, though, to the business need bit. Like, as I said, this group is doing a better job, it seems like, than most. But I think that's a core thing that we need to continually look at as we think about learning is, are we mapping our learning to business needs? What are your thoughts? Do you have some research to support that?
Yeah, and this next slide kind of, in a way, it plays off nicely about the barriers. A lot of organizations are feeling that they have these barriers to doing the kind of learning we're talking about. And that kind of corresponds with this huge gap that we see between the importance of the learning function and the effectiveness. So when we ask this question, we ask it regularly. We ask them, is the L&D function critical or important to business success? And 62% of organizations say, yes, it is critically important to business success. But then we said, is learning delivered in a way that drives the demonstrated results that are aligned with business objectives? In other words, is learning giving me more skilled people who can use the right skills in their jobs to drive the business forward? And only 22% say that is the case. So that's a huge gap that we need to try to find a way to bridge. And the concepts we're talking about today are aimed at helping to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I love that. I tell you, I just noticed there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. I was looking at chat for questions, And I just kind of noticed this thing blinking at me. So I'm finally getting them. So if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. So Robert, great question. How important is using this, meaning hands-on experiences, I believe, to helping participants validate skills for themselves and drive participants to practice more? Robert, I would tell you that what we've seen almost across the board is there is a huge bit of confidence, like department-wide, company-wide, like confidence starting to be built in organizations that are using labs to validate. But also people are finding like think about it this way. What would you rather do? Like put yourself, for me, I used to be technical a long time ago. I now just pretend to be. When I was technical, what would you have rather done? Like I had an hour to kill. Would you go click through a learning class, or would you listen to some entertaining guy like talk to you about something in a video, or would you go play with it? Like, would you go learn it? Would you go figure it out in the technology all day long? Like, if you have any relatives that are technical and you're like, hey, there's this thing I want to learn. Yeah, send it to me. Let me play with it. Like a technical person wants to get their hands dirty and wants to think about it. And as long as there's, learning wrapped around that, where it's like, hey, here's a scenario you're in, go do this. They love it. Like they clamor to it. Some of our biggest customers, you'd be shocked at how many labs some of these people do. But I mean, like big, like tens of thousands of people, departments that are literally averaging like 20, 30, 40 labs a year per person. Like the engagement level is off the charts because people are, it's what they want to do. So Robert, great question. You're exactly right. Cheryl, good question too. Is on-the-job coaching included in the experiential category? I'll tell you, I could give you my opinion, but Claude, I'd love to send that over to you since this was your data. Was it, where was on-the-job coaching included?
Yeah. So people look at it in different ways. We look at it as experiential. Some people look at it as informal. And I think part of that is coaching, real coaching, where you're using active inquiry to really help people with self-discovery. That is clearly experiential in that you're creating an experience for them to not test their actual skills, but to get in touch about what may be holding them back or what they need to do differently. And they're doing that by talking about experiences and situations. And coaching is really important, but I think what we're talking about here is even if you coach somebody about how to do something better or how to get past an obstacle in their job, being able to actually practice that once they know what they need to do, that's the next step. So that's what's so important about the hands-on. I just wanted to glom on to the answer you gave Robert, Frank, if I could, and that is, and I guess you kind of touched on it, but it really is contagious when you do this kind of thing. And you can get that from the real world, right? If somebody is into gaming and somebody tells you about a new game, you want to drive into it. If people are online on Facebook or something and people share a puzzle or share a video or share something, people want to, it goes viral. Everybody wants to be involved. It's the same thing here. Is if there's a new experience that you can try out your skills and somebody says, hey, this is really cool, you should try it, they want to try it. So again, it creates that sense of community and drives enthusiasm into the learning rather than, oh, I've got to take this course. Oh, I've got to take, I have to go get away from my job and go to this classroom session. It's something that you want to do rather than something you have to do.
Yeah, you know what? I love that, Robert. That is really well thought out and super insightful. And I think, as I think about it, like if I'm in the audience, I'm kind of wondering like, geez, like how do I even, like, do I have a process for evaluating this? I mean, this is some research you guys have done as well in terms of mapping to business needs.
Yes, and what it shows is less than half of organizations do have a formal process in place to evaluate the best mix of learning to meet specific goals. The good news is this percentage has gone up considerably over the last couple of years. It used to be like 25%. So like some of the other things we're seeing, people are beginning to get the hang of this, understand what they need to do, and they're scaling it at their own pace. But it's really important, and I think you're going to talk about this in really real terms in a minute, is the idea of kind of beginning at the end. Like, what is the business objective? What do you want to accomplish? And then working backwards to, okay, what are the learning objectives I need to reach this goal? And then what is the right mix of learning in order to reach the goal? And it certainly might include classroom or e-learning to maybe relay information or knowledge, or new skills. But then how are you going to understand and know whether they have absorbed the information and not only really understand and grasp it, but can put it to work? And so creating those formal processes really for each learning initiative that you have is really important so that you get the right mix. Some things might be okay for formal learning depending on what your business goal is, but if it's something where you have to apply a skill in order to drive results, then you've got to look at it differently.
100%. And I think you mentioned, you alluded to this before, but I kind of want to dig into this a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, let me give you a couple of scenarios. And by the way, everybody, please, there's just a few minutes left. Like, we'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So again, hands on keyboard. If you got some questions, comments, please type them in. This is the way we've really seen success with our customers. This notion of kind of helping them get to a place where they're assessing, developing, and validating. It's kind of this cycle. And the way it works is that we've seen that a lot of L&D organizations, they start down at the bottom, which, hey, we need to provide learning that's all about the skill. So what are the skills? What are the skills? What are the skills, right? And the skills for the job, and hopefully those press up into the tasks, which is the role, right? What we've seen work in amazing ways is the opposite. It's like, you've got business goals that are crafting like, hey, here's why I need this job in the first place, right? Then once you know, okay, that's what the job is, and we know what this job needs to do because of the business goals, we'll build hands-on experiences that are all about the task needed to do the job, which, by the way, is mapped to the business goals. Start here. Start with what is the job, and based on the job and what they need to do, let's break down the task and let's say, go do it, Mr. and Mrs. Employee or Mr. and Mrs. Partner, right? Go do it. And once you do it, can they do it? And if they can do it, great. If they can't, that's when you give them other hands-on experiences to get them going. That's where you wrap around an instructor. That's where you wrap around mentoring. That's where you wrap around e-learning, right? So the idea is start with the job, the tasks, have them get in and assess skills, develop skills, validate skills, and pad those experiences with the right kinds of experiences to plug the gaps. These hands-on experiences, what's cool about it is because it's all about the job. It's all about what you have to do on the job. These one hands-on experience, those are super transferable and reusable. So the investment you make to make sure you're recruiting the right people is the same investment you use to make sure you're growing your talent and helping them to practice, Robert, as you said earlier. It's also helping your customers and your partners learn, right? The whole thing starts to drive your learning life cycle in a very unique, compelling way. Because you know that your jobs, hopefully, are mapped to business goals. You kind of know what the people need to do. Well, let's get them to start doing them with hands-on experiences. Now, let me give you an example of how we've seen this work with a very big customer. This is a kind of long-term customer for us. Most of you are probably using at least one of their products right now. What they had this business problem, right? Where, customers, and you've seen this, so you call your internet provider when internet's down, right? Well, how can you get to the right person to solve the problem? How many times have you said, look, I'm in a technology job, like I know technology, and you're like, no, it's not that. I know, yes, I'm going to restart. Like, there's a frustration we all know about customer service, right? So their challenge was, how do I get this customer that I really value? How do I show them that I value them? By getting them to the right person sooner, right? That was their challenge. And I think all of us can go, man, we have that challenge as a business. And by the way, I've experienced that as a customer, right? So what they did is they put their team, and we're talking about an incredible number of people. This is a lot of people in a very giant multi-level department. They put them in hands-on experiences. We call them skillable challenges. That's our product name for it. But we put them in hands-on experiences, and as these individuals can complete more and more and more and get validated skills, they take the skilling data that we generate and feed to them, and they know which people have which skills, you know? And so when a problem comes in and tier one is able to say, hey, we get it, really the swarm in this case, it's not, you know, we understand kind of what the problem is, and we can then map that to the right person. Hey, this is, you know, based on their skills. This is the type of thing that we are going to see, like, it's not we are going to, we are seeing. There are many, many customers doing this, and it's dramatically more realistic than it's ever been, to the point where you don't have to be, you know, a multi-billion-dollar company to start doing some of these things. Like, this is something that's possible today. Claude, I've been yammering a little bit. Is there anything good in the chat that we should talk about, or what are your reactions to this case study?
Well, I think it's a great case study, and Cheryl made a comment on it, and said she really liked it, and wondering about, did the CSAT numbers increase after this? And I assume they did substantially.
Yeah, they did. I will say this, that anecdotally, they definitely have. Like, the customer has shared that the customers are way more pleased. We asked that question right now. They probably haven't been doing it quite long enough for them to establish, yes, it actually went from here to here. So but yes, the answer is absolutely. And what we're seeing too is that the CSAT of, and this is an interesting point, the satisfaction of the employee, the ESAT, right, has really improved. Like, because these, you know, think about this, like when you're kind of upset with the person on the other end of the phone, it's not like you've made their day either, right? And so this is the ability for the employee who's in a help desk situation to feel confident that, hey, I can take this next call, and hey, I know how to solve their problem, and to fix it and get a thank you instead of an earful. There's been we know for a fact that there's a lot of employee satisfaction in these people being able to help better, is I think the way to put it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the other thing here, and I was going to mention it earlier, and this is another good place, is people talk a lot about changing the learning culture, creating a culture of learning, and people struggle with this. And I think the culture of learning can really spread and grow and be ingrained when you're doing these kind of hands-on learning experiences, because it creates this community that we talked about. And you know, Cheryl said it, this is a mantra everybody should have. You know, she said the purpose of any training is to help people do their jobs. That's it. That's it. Just say that over and over and over. And if the training that you're producing isn't doing that, then you need to think about changing how you're doing it. I think we're at a critical juncture here, and not to get on a soapbox here in the learning world, of we've got to get past the focusing on concepts and information and knowledge sharing. Some of that is obviously necessary as you're introducing a new skill. But if you can't create training that helps people do their jobs, all the rest of it is really not important. And that's what we need to focus on.
Tell you what, like, I love that. I mean, and that is kind of what we're seeing with our customers, is they're kind of in this place where they're figuring out through doing, ironically, right? That I'm going to go back one slide, but what they figured out is, if we really do focus on the job, and I'm repeating myself some, but if they really focus on the job, and there was a what this person has to do, and they start with, okay, let's have them do those things, do them. And the more you can do, the better you can do the job, right? Now, still, it's not meaning that all this stuff isn't important. Some of this stuff is going to be included in how you build the hand-on experience, right? But it's not where you start. It's where you start at the job, to the task, and build the experience. What can you do? Assess, develop, and validate, right? Well, hey, with that, I'd love to get into some more Q&A. We've taken a little bit kind of along the way. What are some of the other things that that you guys would love to talk about, or any scenario you'd like to share with us?
Love to hear some questions and comments, even on what we presented here today. What's new for you? What some of your takeaways are?
Yeah, as people are typing, I did see Tanya, you had a great comment in there, like this whole, show me, guide me, let me try. Like that's fantastic. Like I agree. That's been the mantra for a lot of us in the space. And I think this notion of maybe flipping it, hey, let me try. And as I'm trying, guide me where I need to, and then maybe show me, right? But I think that what we're seeing is a lot of adults are like, hey, just let me try it first. And that's where this hands-on, kind of flipping the model a little bit from an instructional design standpoint, of putting the hands-on first and letting people explore the pace and velocity with which people acquire skills that they can own, the contextual skills they can apply, is really ramping faster. That's what a lot of our customers have seen.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about doing skills assessment at the beginning of learning, but the assessments are, really more about knowledge than skill. If you use this kind of hands-on assessment at the beginning as almost an assessment of where they are, like you said, it can help you determine what needs to come next in terms of addressing needs. We did get another question here of how do you set up the tech environment? This is a pretty broad question, but how do you set up the tech environment to do this type of hands-on training?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And honestly, this is what Skillable does. If you think about the name Skillable, it's all about, it's one word, Skillable, but it means it's skills, labs, and abilities, right? And the whole business is all about like we have a platform that enables you to set up genuine environments, set up hands-on exercises, if you will, hands-on experiences based on what these job tasks are. And then we have an engine that allows you to validate the outcome of what the student or what the learner did based on the configuration or what was desired. So if you're like, hey, go set up this database with these permissions, the learner figures out how to do it. And then when they're done, we actually validate, yep, the database is in the right place, the permissions are right, they have that skill, right? And that's what our platform can help you do. We're not the only game in town, but I think that we are probably the most fun. Just kidding. We've got a real heart for it, and it's one of those things that as long as you're moving towards hands-on, our view is you're doing the right thing, and we'd love to help if that's something that makes sense.
Well, Robert has a great comment here. How much easier it is to learn when you're at play. This is very much like playing, and I think that gets right at it. People love to play games. They like to solve puzzles. They like to practice things. They like to try new things. This opens up that world, and it becomes less about work and more about challenge and trying new things and seeing what you can figure out.
Yeah, I would say that for individuals that really love their job or have a desire to love their job, doing hands-on is so much like playing, Robert. You're nailing it, right? Now, if you're in the wrong job, it might not feel like playing for you, right? But I think you're hitting it. And that's why we're seeing the volume of hands-on experiences that individuals and departments, like the engagement is off the charts, because people are enjoying it. Like they want to do more. They see it almost as kind of a reward or a benefit to working in the company, because they can have as much hands-on as they want, like that sort of thing. So great point, Robert.
And again, to extend the context, when you're dealing with hybrid teams, remote teams that are spread across the globe, and you have these kind of online things that can be done by anybody anywhere, it also kind of builds that team. If you're all working on these kind of things, you're all experiencing similar learning experiences, even though that you're hundreds or thousands of miles away. So again, there are other benefits to doing this beyond the obvious benefits of just learning.
Right on, exactly. Wait, oh, there's another one. Who can I speak with? Oh, this is a great one. Who can I speak with if I'd like to work for Skillable? Oh, I thought you were going to say work with Skillable. Work for Skillable. I tell you what, that is like the best. I love that, Cheryl. That's fantastic. We do have a lot of roles open, so check out our website for sure. You can always reach out to me, Frank. I'm frank@skillable.com. So reach out to me, anybody, and I'm happy to plug you into the right spot. But we love what we're doing, and we think we're doing stuff that matters. Like for me, I say this all the time. What I think I'm on the planet for is to help more and more people all over the world to better contribute. And whether they're contributing to their company or to their family because they're making some more money or whatever it is, like it's all about like how are we helping individuals contribute? And I feel like Skillable's got a really cool mission to make a kind of dent in that box. But I don't know. I really loved the time here. So Claude, I want to really thank you for all that you've done to help us to deliver a decent event.
Thank you.
Blast.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, if there's any more questions, fire away. But if not, I think we're good to go. Does anyone else have anything?
I'm not seeing anything. So I think this is a really good note to close on. And I want to thank Frank and Skillable for sponsoring this and providing all this great information. We will be sharing the deck and the recording with you. And then you can also contact Frank or at the email address Jenny's putting in the chat. And so we thank you for participating, taking the time. I know you're really busy. I hope this was really helpful. It certainly was great for us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Brandon Hall Group webinar. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
See you all.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.